Come on, I built a whole base over here.
We have an outpost, and I have a bunch of Dragonators.
I have a Dragonator too.
But I hear you don't even know where it is.
Oh, come on, that's not fair.
And ours can explode.
What? Okay, you know what? That's pretty cool. Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, no matter what, Monster Hunter games will be compared to each other. From one to the next, a lot of things change. It is just the way that the series works. The developers try a bunch of stuff whenever they make a new game, and some stuff gets kept into the next Monster Hunter game, and other stuff gets left behind and replaced with new stuff, all in an effort to do two things. To keep each game feeling unique from each other, rather than just a repeat of the same stuff with new maps and monsters, and also to try and perfect the hunting systems. Sometimes they go a little bit more high pace, sometimes a little bit more high realism. And while recently I did talk about some things I fully believe Iceborne did better than Sunbreak, I think that works both ways, because Sunbreak absolutely did some things better than Iceborne did too. So today let's talk about 10 of those things. First up then, Flintshot. The Clutch Claw system in Iceborne was incredibly controversial. The vast majority of people weren't much of a fan of it. You could latch onto a monster to tenderize various body parts however much you wanted to. You could use slinger ammo to shove it into the wall for a big chunk of damage and a knockdown. And while these things were cool, they felt almost like a requirement, like ticking a box on a list of things that needs to happen every few minutes on a hunt. Even the monsters themselves all shared a certain animation that was literally inviting you to clutch claw them, and then they'd stand still for you a while you did the thing. It was sort of invasive, and for the most part, for most weapons, it didn't really feel like it matched the pace of combat. A big exception being Hammer, which could combo directly into the clutch claw, and that sort of worked out a lot of the issues that it had. The way that Sunbreak did this mechanic better than, though, or at least a part of it, is the Marionette Spider. The Marionette Spider is essentially the Flintshot, but you have to pick up the endemic life first on the map. Then once you use it, you have a lot more control over what happens, and it can only happen a couple of times for the entire quest because there's a limited number of them on the map. The Clutch Claw system is gone entirely, but even a part of it managed to be brought back in a way that most people seem to be happy with now. I mean, at least in comparison. Secondly, the food system. In World and Iceborne, eating food gave you health and stamina buffs depending on the freshness of the ingredients. It could give you an attack buff, a defense buff, or some elemental resistances as well, and then the food skills were generally randomized every quest and had a semi-random chance of activation. In Rise and Sunbreak, we instead got the Dongo system, and while I definitely preferred the animation of the giant platter of meat and stuff that we had before, the system itself I think works way better in Sunbreak, mechanically speaking. Just the sheer act of eating itself gives you a max health buff, and you choose when you eat, what skills you're aiming for. It tells you the activation chance of the buff on the side, and then you can boost the chance significantly with the ticket. In this way, food skills can become an active part of your build and preparation, rather than just being something that you need to do before a hunt that has somewhat random effects.
You should be making fun of the food.
Third, we have weapon designs. Now, a lot of weapon designs are somewhat reused, as we have many returning monsters from older games, and their designs for the weapons were kept. However, they were updated graphically, which helps quite a bit, and more importantly, it's the comparison of what World and Iceborne designs had themselves that matters here. This game had a ton of complaints about the fact that many weapon trees were just made from iron and bone. They were not the prettiest designs, and while it was part of the realism that World tried to go for, building up weapons through the weapon trees and making them actually look like they are the same weapon being added to bit by bit. But the problem is that some of these trees, even at the full end of them, were just partially bone or iron weapons with little tiny bits of the monster on them and not really looking unique to said monster at all. In Sunbreak, we don't have anything like that. We have fun trees like the Royal Order weapons and the Antique Machina weapons, and all of this just sort of shows what lovely designs the team can come up with when they go all out. Fourth is the Afflicted system that Sunbreak has, which directly contrasts the Tempered system from World and Iceborne. The Tempered system was the same monsters, but they just dealt way more damage. The Afflicted system is the same monsters, but they deal more damage, have more health, can apply Blood Blight, which drastically changes the pace of all of the hunts, incentivizing you to be more aggressive, and then they also have certain parts that glow until you do enough damage to them, at which point they pop for a chunk of damage relative to the monster's health itself. But simply, this system is just more complex, and it is way more interesting than just a pure attack ramp up. So regardless of the rewards the system gives, which I know people have more concerns about, I think the hunts themselves are better. Fifth, then, we have hot and cold drinks. In Iceborne, and every previous Monster Hunter game before it, if you were in a desert or a cold area, you would need to consume either a hot or a cold drink or suffer slowly draining stamina or health effects. This was, of course, just a part of your hunting prep. Know what environment you're going to be hunting in and prepare accordingly by bringing the right drinks with you. But in Rise and Sunbreak, this was just totally removed, and I am somewhat of two minds about it. Of course, this system was interesting and it added just a little bit of flavor to the games, making the temperature feel like a genuine factor, but it's hard to deny that this was just a time sink, generally speaking, and a punishment overall if you failed to prepare correctly. Life is simply simpler without them these days.
Can you control the temperature?
6, then, let's talk about the variety of monster types, by which I mean the actual skeletons that the monsters use. In World and Iceborne, we had bird wyverns, brute wyverns, a couple of fanged beasts, a bunch of fanged wyverns, a bunch of flying wyverns, a couple of piscine wyverns, and then just a pile of elder dragons that for the most part shared the exact same skeleton. A lot of these monsters looked somewhat similar, by which I mean if they were in the same class, they generally had the same shape. The monster variety within this was reasonably good, but for comparison, Sunbreak has all of those types I already mentioned, as well as amphibians, leviathans, carapaceans, temnocerans, and even then the variation between some of these is massive, like Bashadan as an example. He's a fanged beast that is nothing like any fanged beast that has ever been made. He looks nothing like Rajang, and then we also have Garangolm as a fanged beast who doesn't really look like Rajang or Bashadan either. No matter what you think about the new monsters in this game compared to the new monsters added in Iceborne, it is undeniable that Sunbreak has way more variety and type of monster and more uniqueness throughout the roster as a result. 7th, we have Palamutes. You could argue that Palamutes weren't a thing at all in Iceborne, so it's not really something you can compare, but well, they're an evolution of the buddy system in general, so we're going off of that. I love the addition of battle dogs that can fight alongside us, and the idea of being able to ride them as a mount into battle to get around the place faster is just awesome. It is convenient, it is fun, and well, put simply, some people are cat people, some people are dog people, and now no matter what you prefer, you can fight alongside your buddy of choice, or even one of each, just because you can. 8th, then, we have the monster intros. This one is a bit personal. I'm sure there are plenty of people who prefer the monster intros in World and Iceborne, but I personally prefer the ones that are done in Rise and Sunbreak. They really give a lot of time and space to each individual creature, tell you just a bit about their personality, show them living a bit of their life when hunters aren't involved, and most of them are delivered with beautifully ominous prose describing the situation. 9th, then, we have the villager idle animations. This is a little bit non-specific, but in Iceborne for the most part the NPCs would be pretty stagnant. Most of them would just stand still on a certain spot, some of them would roam around on set paths, but the paths would always be the same, and so if you spent enough time watching them, it all just started to feel a bit uncanny. But Sunbreak is way better about this, generally speaking. Specifically what I mean is things like this fantastic example of Passapato just hanging out sitting on its sushi soldiers while Luchica eats dango on a balcony nearby. There's no actual in-game reason for this to be happening. It doesn't change anything for the player really, it's just a neat little bit of flavor that makes the outpost feel alive. There are tons of others of these as well, things like Hanoa and Minoto sitting on a bench together eating dango, in Elgato even. Jay practicing his boxing form with Arlo because he can. They're just nice little interactions. They're not a big deal, but it makes the time in between quests just notably feel different. Then finally we have the ability to choose your own difficulty or pace on quests. Specifically by this I mean the addition of spirit birds and collectible agnetic life to be used as tools, like the fact that you can actually carry them with you to deploy when you want. It is entirely your choice how much attention you pay to this mechanic. You can either just run on into a fight 10 seconds into the quest timer, start hitting the monster, and a skilled hunter will probably make it through no problem. But if you want to, you are perfectly able to set aside 5 to 10 minutes at the start of the hunt, just run around collecting loads of spirit birds to increase your health, your stamina, your defense and attack a fair whack, maybe grab a sleep toad, a parotoad, a water beetle, a thunder beetle, and a marionette spider, and then bam, go and fight the monster with a whole arsenal of tools at your disposal that you wouldn't have otherwise, as well as a massive stat buff to boot. The reason that I like this is the way that it is entirely up to each individual player just how much they care about this system, and in a way, it lets you sort of choose your own difficulty for a quest. It doesn't slow down veteran hunters if they just want to go hunt immediately, but it also adds ways for newer players or people that are having a rough time on a certain quest to just even out the scales just a little bit. And that's it, everyone. There are arguably other things that Sunbreak may have done better than Iceborne, but these I think are the main ones worth talking about. Things like switch skills, for example, are massive, but there's no real comparison to that in Iceborne, so you can't really say that it did it better than Iceborne because Iceborne didn't even do it, you know? What do you all think then? Do you agree with the lines that I've drawn in the sand today? What other things do you think that Sunbreak has done better than Iceborne? After all, the entire point of this is to lay out the best parts of both games, the things that we as a community think should be crammed together and then pushed into the next generation of Monster Hunter as a whole. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.